Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to STG304, deep dive on Amazon S3 and Amazon Glacier. My name is Henry Zhang. I'm a product manager for Amazon Glacier. I see a couple familiar faces in the crowd, so super excited to be here and share what I've learned about archiving on S3 and Glacier. And today we have very special guests from Fox, 20th Century Fox, Bill Walker, VP of Cloud Engineering, and Will Rutherford, VP of Information Technology. They're going to share with us how Fox is using S3 and Glacier and other AWS services to enhance the customer experience. So before we get into S3 and Glacier, I want to show you the portfolio of solutions on AWS for all storage. Obviously, customers do not just use S3 and Glacier, which is object storage, as you see in the center. A lot of you use file-based workloads, right? You use EC2, block storage. So these are the three core pillars of storage services that underpin almost all of the workloads that you run, either on premises or in the cloud. What we've done is surrounded them with a number of tools that cuts across the platform. On the right-hand side, you can see a number of security management services and paradigms that really applies to many of these storage services. For example, CloudTrail, right? It applies to all the storage services. It tracks API usage from all the calls that you initiate for safety, for auditing. And we also provide a number of data movement solutions to fit your needs, right? We have storage gateway solutions for customers who want to tier into the cloud but still have access to a local cache. We have Snowball, Edge, and Snowmobile, products that enable mass data movement in petabyte and exabyte scale, as well as computation on the edge. So with all these solutions, customers can really take advantage of deploying a variety of workloads on AWS. And storage is really the underpinning platform solution. So S3 and Glacier are very, very popular for archive workloads for customers. Over the last few years, we've seen tremendous growth in a variety of industries where customers are moving their traditional archive solutions on spinning disk, on tape, offsite tapes into the cloud. And in the recent 2 years, I would say customers are really taking advantage of the entire storage portfolio for object. So S3, S3IA, and Glacier, right? So these products have a lot in common. They're all very durable. They're available and highly scalable, right? You only pay for what you use. You don't have to buy racks of servers. It's very flexible to scale up and down. There's a bunch of built-in security and compliance options that I'll get into in a little bit. And then they're obviously low cost. Glacier, for example, starts at 0.4 cents per gigabyte per month. And then we surround it with a number of ecosystem tools. Whether be it backup software, be it content management systems, be it digital asset management solutions for media customers, be it records management solutions, voice recording solutions for financial services. Right? So we really try to help customers work through the ecosystem so that you can pick whichever way that is easiest for you to use S3 and Glacier for archiving workloads. So not only that, we're not happy with you storing data alone. Because archive, as it appears, feels like just putting data somewhere and letting it sit, right? We want to make our archives very active. In the last 1 year, we've been working on a lot of active archive capabilities. So one of the things to mention is this query in place capability that we launched for S3 and Glacier today. It's called Select, S3 Select and Glacier Select, which allows you to filter data before you retrieve them. Query in place. This is super meaningful for Glacier because it allows you to analyze data sets before you retrieve the whole thing. Right? This is something that people have not been able to do on traditional archive systems, which are largely based on tapes. So customers use S3 and Glacier for a variety of reasons. I've mentioned that there is no capital investment required. I work with a lot of tape customers, for migration, such as Fox. A lot of customers, in this room customers really enjoy not having to take care of hardware. It is especially difficult to handle tape refreshes, right? And it's a very boring but necessary job for the admins. Let's do a quick show of hand. How many of you use tape or have used tape for archive solutions? Great, you've come to the right session. And I hope after today, you'll be looking at new solutions where you no longer have to plan for 5-year purchases, fill out the tape slots, buy expensive licenses from whoever you choose that from, handle the media, manage media obsolescence, right, and do migrations. All of this can stop. You can say no to that. Stop the heavy lifting and really focus on the new business initiatives that brings additional value, that brings new customer experience. Like Andy said in the keynote this morning, this is a golden age for information technology. And so is the case for archiving space. We're really trying to renew this space and make it more exciting. A lot of customers pick S3 and Glacier for archiving because they like the fact that the services are available in many regions. This is super critical for a lot of customers, government customers, regulated entities who have to deploy data sets in a region, for example, that matches their domestic regulations. For example, German customers have to keep their business records in Germany. So we have a region in Frankfurt. We also have customers that have to deploy, replicate data 600 miles apart in 2 locations to meet certain public sector rules in the US, right? So customers use all of our global data centers as an extension to the data center, and gradually they only need the AWS data centers worldwide. So what have customers been doing with S3 and Glacier when they manage storage across all these tiers? Very, very common. Customers archive data across these platforms, across these 3 tools. Your data typically starts being very hot. You would push it into S3 standard, where you would get instant access, right? So take the media use case. This is like the work in progress sets where you have very high-speed spinning disk or SSDs that you can do very fast retrievals, very high throughput, do edits in place. And then after you're done with the editing, maybe a week after the initial processing, you may still want to access the data probably once a week for the next month, but you don't need that high throughput. You want to pay less, right? So traditionally people move it off to slower disk or move it off of SSDs and put it in a slower, cooler storage. There is the S3 infrequent access, which is cheaper than S3 standard, and you only pay for retrievals when you do so. Then there's Glacier, which is the library assets for media customers. After I'm done with this movie, with this project, all the editings are done. I've generated all my mezzanine files. I don't need to transcode them anymore for now. I can archive all of them into an archiving tier, save money, but I still have access to pull that out when I want to. So across the board, you see S3 standard and S3 infrequent access, which can offer instant access, right? You start streaming the content right away. Whereas in Glacier, it is asynchronous. So this is important when you plan your applications. Your applications have to be able to handle asynchronous access. This is a little bit of a trade-off because with asynchronous access, we can do a lot more with Glacier to reduce cost and pass on the savings to you, right? So I know some vendors, cloud vendors, offer synchronous access to archive data. It is very helpful. It simplifies the application model. But if you're looking at deploying very large scale, like double-digit petabyte storage, you will get a benefit with asynchronous storage if you just program it right. So it's a little bit of trade-off. And as a platform, we really help customers tie the experience together using S3 Lifecycle, right? The 3 products are really storage classes within S3. And there are really several ways to tier data across them that helps you optimize performance, throughput, and lower your cost, right? So to start with, you can tier data from S3 standard to S3 infrequent access or to Glacier on demand. Every time you move it to the right, you start saving money, right? Last year, we added this very cool capability, which is tag-based transitions. So before, you have to specify transitions based on timelines, right? You can say, after a month, tier data from hot to cool, and then after 90 days, tier data from cool to archive tier. Now you can say filter by tags, right? You can say, hey, these are archive-ready assets. After I tag them, I can tier them over right away, right? So there was, some customers, especially media customers, have this, request, which is, I finished this large, mezzanine file, I'm done. I want to archive it right away, but I don't want to write one policy for every, large file that I want to move, right? So how do I do that? Now you have a solution. You can set up a policy that says, tier everything to Glacier right away if it's tagged with processed or finished, right? Then for each file that you want to tier over, you just add the tag. And tags are very simple to use, very cost effective. In addition to having yourselves manage the logic and the optimal sort of transition point for different data tiers, we offer something called storage class analysis, right? So we basically monitor the access patterns for your S3 bucket, and then we recommend transition patterns that will likely help you solve reduced cost, right? We'll give you histograms of what data sets are most popular, which are least popular based on access frequencies, and then we'll give you hey, this data sets with this prefix, we recommend tiering them over to Glacier after 90 days because historically they're pretty cold after 90 days. So a lot of combinations with the policies that you can leverage. So I talked about saving money. So how much can you save? To give you an example, 1 petabyte of S3 standard costs about $24,000 per month. If you tier that into S3 IA, you immediately save 45%. And then if you tier that into the Glacier storage class, you save another 68%. Right? So that's pretty phenomenal savings, especially if you're looking at double-digit, triple-digit petabytes. For archiving, it's long-term storage, so you're looking at a lot of savings over multiple years. And obviously, we do special pricing for very large volumes. So this is the S3 console, where you can easily set up lifecycle policies. This is one of the very popular patterns, which is after 30 days, tier data from hot to cool. And then after a year, tier data into Glacier, into the archive tier. Just a couple of clicks, you can set it up, and then it will just do the work in the background for you. So I want to mention something very cool about Glacier. How many people know about the retrieval tiers? OK, fewer than I thought. So last year, just before reInvent, we launched Retrieval Tiers for Glacier. What is that? Before, Glacier only had one access model, which is the standard retrieval, which gets your data back in about 4 hours, right? So it was very helpful for customers, but it had limitations. Customers were able to replace their offline tapes, such as tapes in Iron Mountain with Glacier, but they could not replace on-site tapes that's loaded in a library, right? So we improved that. We launched expedited retrievals, which allows you to get data back as fast as 1 to 5 minutes. This is really meant for urgent access, right? And this is very comparable, if not faster, to on-site online libraries. How many people have libraries, tape libraries? OK, great. And then we also created a slower, more cost-effective tier, which is the bulk retrieval tier. That allows you to pull back data in 5 to 12 hours. And it is super exciting because we have many customers pulling back petabytes of data on a daily basis. We had a large financial services customer who backed up an entire H-based cluster. It's about 1 petabyte, right? So they used Glacier for the DR. And then they were able to pull back the entire cluster in 1 day and then rehydrate that within 48 hours, right, to recreate their DR application stack in a different region. And for a lot of media customers, this is super exciting because now you can push all of your mezzanine files in Glacier. You can pull back a petabyte, a day, and then start retranscoding the data. Let's say, iPhone 8 or iPhone 9 comes out, right? This is something that people cannot do on tape drives today because there isn't enough I/O capacity in your tape library, right? Most people have enough drives to support the ongoing backup workloads and the day-to-day retrieval operations. But if you're looking at pulling back, a petabyte of tape, most customers told us that they don't have that much capacity, right? And buying drives and fitting that into your libraries, it's kind of a churn if I just have to do that, once per year. So a lot of customers tell us that they're super excited about Glacier with these new retrieval tiers because not only can they replace on-site tapes, offline tapes, they can also do things that they couldn't do before, which is, petabyte scale retrievals on Glacier, almost every day, right? That allows them to leverage the compute power of AWS. That's, again, not available on demand in the on-premises world. So it's quite clear if you have seen, we are really trying to make our archives active in various ways that can help you, drive more insights into your data, from your data, and monetize your assets. So let's talk about durability. Both S3 and Glacier offer 11 nines of durability. How many of you know exactly what that means? 11 nines. Don't be shy. Okay, so I've had this conversation with many customers. Again, I work very closely with media customers. They always ask me, what does that mean, right? Most customers are accustomed to talking about durability in number of copies. Either have 2 copies or 3 copies in the same site or across different regions. They talk about, they want to understand the fixity check that the Glacier has and the automatic recovery that we built into the system. So this is a traditional redundancy model, right? These are the primary and the disaster recovery locations. That is one building. Some folks will call it a data center, but it's essentially a building with power and networking, right? So a lot of customers tell us that when they use tapes for archives, they would do 2 copies in one building, just in the primary site, or they would do 1 copy in the primary site and 1 copy in the DR site. It's typically 10, 20 miles apart, and they feel that's typically sufficient for their durability, right? And then we tell them, hey, Glacier and S3's durability looks like this, right? It's many buildings in many availability zones, and all of these buildings have independent power network and are on different floodplains. And we support an entire region, which is like a quarter of this pie going down and entirely gone, right? So it's a big shift from the 2 copies to multiple copies in multiple buildings and AZs. So how do we map that durability difference, right? So I think this was a year ago. I was working with one of the largest studios in Hollywood, probably not hard to guess. They asked us, how did you guys derive 11 nines? We talked about 2 copies of tape, which is what they use. And then we walked them through a Markov chain model that we use to derive the theoretical durability of S3 and Glacier, right? So the Markov chain model simulated failures for storage devices, the servers, the networking gear, the rack, as well as the building and the entire AZ. We simulated everything that can go down and be wiped out, right? So according to the simulation, Glacier and S3 can offer 11 numbers of nines, and actually we can do more than that. We just publish 11 nines. And then we share the model with the large studio and ask their architects to run a simulation on their 2 copies of tapes and 3 in the same location and on 2 different locations. So they came back with 4 nines for 2 copies of tape in the same building, and 5 nines for 2 copies of tape in 2 different buildings, right? That was a big moment because it was the first time we managed to bridge number of nines to copies, and that made the conversations much easier. Customers really were able to see the level of durability that AWS storage offers. And I also want to share with you that if you look at some of the competitors' solutions, we're probably the only one that offers storage solution that protects against the entire failure of one AZ, right? Some vendors out there, they claim multi-region. Region is a very loose concept. We're actually the only one that offers that supports entire AZ going down, and your data is still protected. So that's a big deal. So in addition to the built-in availability, we also offer built-in fixity check, which fixity really means that your data is the same as it was uploaded. So we do that in the following manner. When you send us data to Glacier, we request that you compute a checksum of your content. It's a content hash. It's unique. And then when we receive your content, we compute a checksum using the same algorithm, and we compare the checksums. If our checksum and yours are different, then we know there was a bit flip over the wire. Then we decline that request, right? If we receive the same checksums, then we're going to store your data reliably, and we store the checksum with the data in the same durable format. That enables us to do periodic fixity check in the background. What we do is we look at the replicas of your data. We read the data, compute the checksum, and compare it against the checksum that we stored. Right? If there's a difference, we know there's a potential for corruption. And those partial errors do happen because we manage hundreds of billions of objects in the system. But it's not a problem. When we detect that, we will use one of the replicas to fix it up. Right? So this is how we do the fixity check in the background. It's built into the system for S3 and Glacier. Comes at no extra cost. And we typically sweep through everyone's data for fixity check a few times a year. Right? This is, again, something that customer asks me a lot. How often do you do fixity check? And they tell us that most customers are not able to scan and perform fixity check for 100% of the data because they don't have enough drives. Right? Or they don't have enough people to really manage scanning through 10 petabytes or 20, 50 petabytes of data. It's a lot of work. Right? Customers tell us that they typically sample. They pick the most important data. They probably do 1% per month. So we actually do fixity check more often than most customers. So even though we talk about an archive system, it seems very quiet and cool, especially Glacier. It doesn't feel like lots is going on. But there's actually a lot going on in the background that ensures the durability that we offer you. So here's another creative use case for adding additional durability and availability. Right? So this is using S3's cross-region replication in conjunction with the Lifecycle capability tiering into Glacier. So in this model, I have bucket A in the US. I set up cross-region replication, push the data into a bucket in Japan. And after the data lands in the destination bucket, I enable a lifecycle policy to tier it into Glacier. So what did I get? I have my primary site, maybe my production site, right, with data in S3 instant access. I move the data to a different region, tiered it into Glacier, so I have a low-cost DR solution. And some customers are even more creative. They would tier the source site, the bucket A, into Glacier as well, right? Maybe a month after. After it's been pushed to the secondary site, they tier the primary site as well, right? To further lower the cost. So very creative use cases that can use, you can build, in conjunction with all these building blocks. So let me talk about accessibility. There are really 4 ways to using S3 and Glacier. What we recommend and what most customers do is using the lifecycle, right? The lifecycle management that gives a very integrated solution, similar to a hierarchical storage manager. Then you can also use Amazon Glacier as a standalone service with its own APIs. You get more control through the APIs. And then you can also use S3, the AWS Storage Gateway, which gives you local cache tiering into S3 and Glacier. Storage Gateway has this super exciting capability, which it will tier the objects in their native format into S3 and Glacier. That gives you more flexibility to process them in the cloud. And finally, you can use a number of third-party tools and gateways to tier the storage without having to write code. So a very quick walkthrough of the Glacier API. So on the upload, you create a container, which is a vault. You configure the access, who can and cannot do what. You upload an archive, and then we will create a unique archive ID for you. Right? The thing to call out here is the ID is unique even if you upload the same file again. Right? We create a system hash, and that is the hash we use for fixity check in the background. What customers typically do if they go with this path is they will store the unique archive ID in a database like DynamoDB, and then they will match it to the local file name, additional metadata that they want to store with this file. Right? And on the retrieval path, it's very simple. You tell us the archive ID. You pick a retrieval tier, expedited, standard, or bulk, and then we return the data to you. Right? Super simple. So third-party tools. It's also a very hot topic amongst a lot of enterprise customers because many customers just want to use storage without writing code. Right? That's easier. So we really help customers think about it in three angles. For consumer grade, you can use Cloudberry, Fast Glacier. These all support S3 and Glacier tiering for less than $50, right? And then for small, medium business, we see customers deploy, $1,000 NAS, like a Synology NAS that has Glacier and S3 integration. They will store the hottest data in their local cache and tier data into the cloud and save money, right? Then customers can deploy a hub and spoke model where the core office will have replication from a larger NAS trickling down to the NAS devices in the satellite offices, and satellite offices are back into the cloud. And finally, we have enterprise grade gateways such as NetApp's AltaVault, and then we have a variety of backup software, Commvault, HSM solutions like StoreNext, and then digital asset management solutions like Vitispine that have native AWS integration. So how do you choose? You can probably find over 100 storage, partner storage solutions on our marketplace, right, with varying degrees of S3 and Glacier integration. So most customers are happy with the lifecycle path, right, because they're happy with S3's built-in key service. The indexing is sufficient. They don't really rely on S3 to do very fancy lookups or queries. They don't use it as a database, right? The listing is just fine. So they take advantage of the scale. But some customers would prefer very fancy indexing systems, metadata, right, about their archives. A lot of media customers require that. So in that case, they can choose the S3 path, or they can choose Glacier APIs, right? You'll have a database that manages the metadata. And finally, customers would pick third-party tools if they don't want to write any code. So one word of advice, when you choose third-party tools, we recommend tools that write data in native format, right? So a lot of the backup software do not write data in native format. Your file gets chunked up into a proprietary format. It's good that it's efficient, but it limits the capabilities for you to process those data sets in the cloud using our big data platform, right? So highly recommend picking a third-party tool that just writes native files, native format, and then you're in good shape. So let's talk about compliance. How many people work for financial services in the room? Okay, quite a good number. Are you guys aware of VaultLock? Okay, cool. So Glacier offers this unique enterprise class compliance storage capability called VaultLock, right? It's very comparable to EMC's Centera, NetApp's SnapLock, like a warm storage, except we don't sell you a box. What you can do is deploy compliance controls, such as time-based retention in Glacier. And then we will allow you to basically turn your Glacier container into warm storage where you can say, I want to lock up the data, make it immutable for 7 years. All of that comes at no extra cost. So what does VaultLock do for you? It gives you the ability to deploy non-overwritable and non-erasable storage. Remember that Glacier starts off being immutable storage. When you upload the same archive twice, we treat those as independent files, right? So we did the work to support a VaultLock policy, which you can prescribe. No one can delete data, for example, for 7 years, which applies to all the actors on AWS, any AWS user, right? So that gives you the ability to lock down the vault and ensure worm compliance. We also support legal hold based on tags. And we support, for financial companies, we make it very easy for you to set up dedicated third parties if you are a regulated entity. We also work very closely with the industry teams, right? So when we launched VaultLock, we also obtained a third-party assessment from Cohasset Associates, who is the go-to consultant firm, security firm, and they would produce these assessments for all of the incumbent compliance storage solutions. So with VaultLock, you can use it to meet SEC Rule 17a-4 regulations. So let me walk through a very quick example. How do I implement 1 year record retention in Glacier? So we do the translation, which is 1 year retention means deny, delete, archive operation from anybody, including your root and administrator account, and your business partners, when the archive is younger than 365 days. Right? I turn that into a policy. It's about 10 lines of code in the console. You lock it up, and then you have a warm storage container. No extra cost. And you can take a snapshot of a screenshot of this policy, give it to your compliance officer, and you're in good shape. Right? So with that, I would like to invite my special guest from Fox onto the stage.
So hi, my name is Will Relaford, and I'm the Vice President of Fox Media Cloud and our global distribution of content. And before we get started, I'll give you a little background on who Fox is. So Fox has been around since 1935, creating feature films and television shows that inspire the world for the past 82 years. So Fox is broken up into 3 main categories. We have our theatrical division, our home entertainment division, and our international television distribution division. In theatrical, we've had some of the highest grossing films like Avatar. We had some of the most inspiring films like Hidden Figures, and one of the most kick-butt films like Deadpool. And for some of you Deadpool fans out there, we have a little bit of swag at the end of the presentation that we'll want to toss out to the crowd for some of you who have some of the most exciting questions for us. So in home entertainment, we support all major OTT platforms. We work very closely with Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, iTunes, to name a few, creating content that some of you, I'm sure, have enjoyed on some of these platforms. And we still sell DVDs, believe it or not. We create DVDs and Blu-rays. It's still a pretty profitable business for us. For our international television distribution line of business, we deliver feature content, television content, and marketing materials to over 195 countries around the world. We deliver content to almost every country with the exception of one. I'm sure you can guess what that is. And in 15 formats in 65 different languages. And we average about 2.5 million assets delivered each year, which equates to about almost a petabyte of content that we transfer in data per month. Our motto at Fox is to make it early, make it once, and use it many times. To support our many lines of businesses with 15 different formats and 65 different languages and companion files for subtitles, dub cards, dubbing, and things of that nature, storage and the scalability of storage in our infrastructure has become a primary focus. So while Fox continues to create content that inspires the world, our distribution network continues to be one of our primary things that we want to resolve. So our previous setup was with a data center called Switch. It's here in Los Angeles. Here in Las Vegas. And it was our distribution hub for all of the content that we distribute worldwide. So there are many challenges with managing on-prem data centers. I'm sure many of you have had experiences with having to deal with a failure of infrastructure and hardware, having to deal with the resources, being on site to install certain things. And for us, we have a 60-day lead time to add additional storage to be able to support the delivery of our content for our customers. Over 23,000 B2B partners that we deliver content to, and we manage over 23 million assets in our repositories in the center. So we've gone through countless storage upgrades to try to maintain this type of distribution network. And I don't know if you've gone through this, but we've had 12-hour outages to increase the storage in our data centers, and that has an impact on our business. It also has an impact on the continuity of our distribution platform. So that remains a core focus and why we are moving to more of an S3 and Glacier type of distribution network. So one of the make early, use many use cases that we have is around our marketing assets. So our marketing assets, we create our marketing campaigns around the world. So if you can imagine for a film like XMen, we have to create specific key art that is approved for usage, right? So we have a trafficking team that comes together and they review a ton of work in progress materials, and that work in progress material turns into finalized key art that can be used to create all types of materials for marketing campaigns for territories distribution. With that, global one-sheets are created, and then many localized versions of those assets are created. And this all stems from the initial round of trafficking and approval of the initial content that can be used for creating these types of campaigns. So this one file was downloaded over 2,000 times to create localized versions of content to be created and distributed to market our films and television shows worldwide. Next, we have our theatrical marketing use case, which actually uses the same files to create marketing presentations, countdown graphics, online banners, you name it, all from that same file. And what this does is it allows our marketing teams to have a consistent marketing campaign across all the territories that we support when marketing our films and television shows. Home entertainment, similar things. There's our famous CD that's there. So we create images that are from the same approved materials to create packing slips, CDs, electronic sell-through materials, and things like that. And television distribution as well. So a different spin on how they use the materials, but it all stems from pulling together a group of traffickers that will take this material, approve it, make it available in our digital asset management system, so allow them to go to one place and download this material, get it to their partners and vendors so that they can create the campaigns and materials in a timely fashion to be able to market our films. This has been so successful with our last release of Deadpool. We were able to get materials out to our business 300 days before the theatrical release date. So that provided ample time for our territories to be able to create their campaigns and to market our feature shows. Same with theatrical trailers. So we create a trailer and allow people to go in and download this information to create localized versions of these trailers for distribution and marketing purposes. And here we go. And then with XMen in particular, from that initial one sheet that was created, we had ended up with 13,000 assets that were downloaded and used across 510 external users that we have around the world. And those files were downloaded over 73,000 times, and it's just a proof at how our trafficking campaign works for us, for the distribution of these types of marketing materials. So with that, that's all I have for you. I'm going to ask Bill Walker to come up. He's going to walk you through our cloud transformation, digital supply chain.
Thanks, Will. And as Will said, I hope you guys like raunchy Deadpool t-shirts, because that's all we brought. Again, my name is Bill Walker. I work with Will at 20th Century Fox. I run the cloud engineering and operations team. So I think before we get into the Glacier specific use case, I just want to kind of show you a slide and orient you on what our overall cloud strategy looked like at Fox that we started on about a year ago, and how we think about it. So kind of going along the top line, you've got the sort of the business systems, and at the bottom line, you've got the media processing systems that eventually feed what we'll talk about in a minute, which is the Fox Media Cloud. But sales, all of this stuff used to be on-premise about a year ago. We started thinking about it logically and how we could break it up and move parts of it to the cloud with the eventual goal of having everything in the cloud, hopefully in Amazon or somewhere in the cloud. The sales piece, which was on-premise in Siebel, we moved to Salesforce. That was, CRM was a natural fit for that. The rights piece, which is very important in our business, which basically lets us know if we've sold a piece of content in a particular territory in a particular way, that we don't double sell it to a competitor or somebody else like that. That was an on-premise homespun system that we've, are getting rid of. We're going with a company called RightsLine that is actually AWS based. They're a SaaS provider, but they run in Amazon. The business management piece is what does the order fulfillment when somebody orders a piece of content, whether it's a disk or a digital file. Right now, that's all on-premise, but it's being moved to Amazon and transformed. The media processing piece down the bottom side is the digital archive, which is on the left there, is where we keep all of our masters. Currently, all of that's on-premise right now on very large tape drives, kind of as Henry was talking about, very large walk-in SL8500s. We have, I believe, almost 18,000 tapes from LTO3 to LTO6 in that. But we're in the process with the team that runs that of looking to move that all to Glacier, a mix of Glacier and S3, but largely Glacier because of the tape piece to it. The content security piece, which is very important in our business, is the forensic watermarking, burn-in, DRM, that kind of thing that basically usually it mostly affects stuff that's pre-release. So whether we're talking about Deadpool 2 or the Dark Phoenix, we don't want that getting out and ruining the surprise for everybody. All of that was originally on-prem. We're working with vendors such as Civolution and Erdetto that are taking their platforms to the cloud right now. And we're kind of in flight on that as we speak. And then the media processing piece, right now, obviously do a lot of transcoding. We're blessed to have our own post-production facility on the lot that does more boutique, but a lot of our content today, I would say 75% of what they do is our content. And they do mastering, the dubbing, the whole thing, and we're in the midst of taking all of that processing and uplifting it to the cloud. And of course, looking at what Amazon's doing right now with Elemental is a potential for that. Now, running along the spine of those core pieces is metadata. So one of the things we realized in our business recently, when we went out and kind of surveyed all of the landscape, everybody had a challenge within Fox, and I think it's really a vertical challenge within media around metadata. Do we have enough of it? Are we reusing it? How rich is the metadata? Things like that. Right now, we do have an on-premise system that we are uplifting into Amazon. And it was originally a film system, but we're going to push it 2 NCF wide called Foxopedia. But we're using Amazon as the kind of home base for that product. And then all of that feeds what Will was showing before, the Fox Media Cloud. So we really consider that our distribution cache for all of our finished content. So this is content that's been compressed. It's been QC'd. Everything is ready to go to the OTT vendors. It's ready to go to a broadcaster, whoever. It's ready for somebody to watch it. All of that originally was on-prem, and I'll get into the use case in a minute. But we're in the midst of uplifting that as well to Amazon, and we found a fantastic MAM vendor we're working with called Vitaspine that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. And then that of course, distribution cache is going to feed a lot of use cases around our B2B platforms, which is what the sales team uses to show our content and sell it to customers. Screeners platforms, so within the Fox family, if we want to have an executive or anybody see some of our content, we use that to show it to them. And then we have specific marketing and broadcast portals for various verticals within our business, such as sports and the broadcast, the main Fox channel, things like that. So this is a graph of my Amazon bill. No, I'm kidding. This slide is really to show the journey we've been on from a storage perspective. So the Fox Media Cloud started actually about around 2002, but what's interesting is it kind of predates the run of digital. So the original system that was Fox Media Cloud was a marketing system. So it was really a place to distribute marketing materials, right? It wasn't really broadcast quality files. But as you can see, right around 2008, right as the rest of the industry started going digital, we needed a place to store and deliver digital files rather than disks. And we decided to use the Fox Media Cloud, or the original system was called Esprit, but we decided to use that as the sort of jumping off point for that. The challenge though with that is that one's been an on-premise system. As Will mentioned, the primary has been in Vegas, the backup has been in Los Angeles, but probably like many of you, tons of storage frames, I mean racks and racks of storage, and we keep having to feed the beast, multiple times a year with petabyte after petabyte. And I think the challenge specifically in our industry too is as formats change, from 1080p to 4K or to 8K eventually, the size of the file and the amount of storage you need for content jumps exponentially. So, we often joke it's not a hockey stick, it's almost like bending backwards in time, it's so bad in terms of our need for storage. But because of that, we realized we need to get to a place where we don't have to keep feeding, the storage beast in terms of having racks and racks of storage. So that's when we hooked up with Henry and the AWS team and said, what, we've decided we need to uplift the whole platform and go to cloud, because we don't want to be worrying about, new use cases coming on. We want to just have the storage. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did in terms of the actual migration. So as I mentioned, primary was in Vegas, the DR was in Los Angeles. So, one of the challenges with our use case too, probably like yours, we've got application complexities because the application needs to talk to the storage and know where it is and manage it. So we were trying to decide how we were going to uplift the whole thing and take it to cloud. So we decided rather than focus on production initially, we would look at DR and kind of breaking the replication with that and taking it into the cloud as kind of a first step. So what we've done, kind of as depicted there, is we decided to take the DR, which was about an 8 petabyte cache in Los Angeles, and replicate that up to Amazon East, because we decided that would be our DR site for what we were doing, and basically landed on S3, but Lifecycle it immediately down to Glacier because it is DR and we didn't need it to be hot. So the other challenge though was time was not on our side. We were in a hurry to do it. So, we debated whether or not to do kind of a native replication using the S3 tools or use a UDP file acceleration utility like an Aspera or Signiant. So in this use case, we decided actually to use Aspera to do it because we use it a lot already in our business and it's very familiar with us. So what we ended up doing was creating multiple bonded 10 gig connections out of Los Angeles to Amazon East, but we used the internet. We didn't use Direct Connect this time, even though we had it. And created a fleet of Aspera servers and then accelerated the movement of that content up into Amazon, and then we landed it on Aspera's on-demand service, which was, we debated whether or not doing it ourselves, but ultimately we decided to use their on-demand service, which helps facilitate the movement into S3. So we did that, and we were able to move 8 petabytes of content in roughly 60 days, which for us better than what we thought, because I think we were originally thinking 90. And about 16 gigabytes average throughput we were getting, and as Will mentioned, 23 million assets. So that's kind of how we got there. Now, the in-state we're shooting for right now is eventually, so we dropped it in US East and life-cycled it to Glacier, but the eventual in-state is the hot production cache will be in the US West in Oregon on S3, with a copy in S3 East that is life-cycled down to Glacier. And we've actually talked too about potentially, as we get more mature on the US West side, further tiering down to S3IA and Glacier potentially, but that's not really a DR use case, that's more of just a business lifecycle use case. Okay, this slide kind of depicts what I was talking about before, which is really just the media processing chain. The stuff in blue kind of on the right side is the stuff we've already done, which is that 8 petabyte cache. The other pieces I would say that we're still kind of working on that are left to do are the overall media processing, which is that post-production piece that I was mentioning before, which is really the heavier transcoding piece. And then the really big move, I think, is going to be the content library where we store all the master files that we do all the the mezzanines and the proxies that Henry mentioned from. Right now, it's about 22 petabytes of content on tape and split between 2 locations. And like I said, we've got four large SL85 robots, I think 32 arms, 18,000 tapes. So massive amount of content to move. We've been debating actually whether or not to do it with snowmobile or to just accelerate it, using a spare or something like we did the original. I think mostly just so we could get a selfie with the snowmobile. But alas, I think we'll probably end up just sending it over the wire like we did the other one before. And then I mentioned Vitaspine. So they're a partner that we've got introduced to through Amazon. They're a Swedish-based company that has a newer MAM system that is designed, for the cloud and for Amazon actually specifically, but understands and talks S3 and actually talks Glacier, which is not something we found in any MAM on the market today. So we're, small company, but very agile, and we're very excited to work with those guys. And then, just overall benefits, I can say honestly, from the hundreds of thousands of CapEx that I used to spend on DR and refreshing that, even though we never really did anything with it, down to my Amazon bill now for Glacier, which is, a couple of $1,000s a month. It's an amazing, amazing change. And then reallocation of labor. I mean, we were able to take people who were doing tapes and things like that and really reallocate them to higher level things. Durability, I mean, if you've ever run tapes or disk on premise, you know about failures and the challenges with that stuff. It's nice to not to have to worry about that, and as Henry mentioned, you get the 11.9s from Glacier naturally. And then just, the scalability and speed. I mean, the ability to think up something like this and just do it within, less than 90 days from start to finish for us was just absolutely amazing. And I can tell you honestly, it's not something we ever would have been able to do before with, tape libraries and on-premise storage and things like that. So with that, I think we're down to questions and time for Deadpool t-shirts if anybody's got good questions.
If you have questions, please come up to one of the 2 microphones in the middle so the room can hear you.
Hello. I was pretty much interested in when you're moving your data.
Yep.
Are you moving the data for backup purposes, or are you delivering data and content to customers, or what are you moving all this data for?
Yeah, so, well, the use case I think that we showed you specifically right now around Glacier was a DR use case where we were getting rid of the, the LA copy of the data.
Yep.
and life cycling it down to Glacier. what I was mentioning though before is I think what we'll end up with eventually is a mix of, you know, the using Glacier for disaster recovery copy in East, but also possibly using Glacier in the West to lifecycle stuff that's just not active, that doesn't make sense to spend the money, you know, to have hot S3 storage on, right? So I think it's going to be a mix.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I was curious.
Yep. Actually, can you, Devin, can you administer the
right
t-shirts,
here,
please? Oh.
Question.
Here you go. Here you go.
All right.
Yes.
All right, come on. Question. over here.
I'm curious of your testing of retrieval. So I think we always see everything going there. How successful is getting it out, you know, and making sure that your DR was actually well thought out.
Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so really good question. So we've done several tests, actual production tests with that. So before we actually moved the content there was quite a bit of testing that was done. But just recently, you know, with all of our content sitting on the East Coast in Glacier, DreamWorks was recently acquisitioned by NBC Universal from Fox, and we had about 160,000 of their assets sitting in our MAM. And rather than moving all the content from our Las Vegas facility through traditional means with a spare and things like that, we were able to hydrate that content out of Glacier and then do an S3 to S3 bucket copy to get that content over to them. So like Henry mentioned earlier, with some of the checksums and the SHA-1s and SHA-2s to validate that the files actually reach their destination, we're able to actually do that, as well as provide some additional metadata for them in a CSV format and inject the object URL into the file so that they can find and download and do whatever they want with the materials. So we've had several different use cases of us doing that, doing it again with Gray Meta, getting content over to a specific location for them so that we can run some of the cognitive processes on some of these assets, and as well as moving things around just between from Fox. So it's proven to be a very easy and creative way for us to get our content from point A to point B very quickly.
Cool. All right. Come on up and we'll have
yes.
a shirt for you. All right, next question.
Question right here. You mentioned that you land your assets into S3 and immediately transition them into Glacier. Why you do that? Why don't you just copy them to Vaults directly without S3? Just copy them.
Copy them to where?
Oh, via API?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, because we needed to preserve some of the pathing on that. We felt it was the right thing to do to land it on S3, and then eventually, like, we would only talk through S3 basically to it.
Okay.
But we did talk a little bit about using, going the direct API route, but I think for us, just the complexity of that wasn't worth the
yeah. And like Bill mentioned, and one of the primary reasons is, as it is a cold DR for us, we want to have the replication between the different buckets with the same object URL, and natively just copying directly to Glacier, we don't get the S3 object URL that we have to actually store in our MAM. So we need some information to be able to deliver the content, which would be our end state, out of Amazon West. So that's metadata that's critical to us for delivering the content to our customers globally.
And a second question, if I may. You mentioned MAM, DAM quite frequently. Just curious, how long do you keep your original files inside those systems before you move them into the archive?
Well, historically, we've kept everything, on-premise. I mean, we had on-premise storage, right, so we traditionally didn't have tiering of storage in our on-prem environment. But now we're moving to more of the S3 Glacier infrequent access type of thing. So we're looking at some of the, like Bill mentioned earlier, some of our rights systems and some of our contract systems, and since they're integrated tightly with our media platform, we're able to look at windowing and avail to do computations of when we need to have that content put in lower storages. So he also mentioned that we're not there yet. So once we get everything there and get a little bit more mature with that, we're going to start implementing that type of archival strategies.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. I wouldn't say we're done.
Great, thank you. So we would love to take more questions, but we have to get the next session ready. So why don't we move to the hallway and we'll take questions over there.
All right.
Cool.
We still have
Thank you for coming.
so.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.